All right, friends, thank you very much for joining us here in the Netafim tent. We are talking about subsurface drip irrigation -E, and the E means effluent. On livestock operations across North America, we're now utilizing the runoff from the facilities as a source of fertilizer, obviously for irrigation, and also to comply with increasing amounts of environmental standards. This is something that's going to be an issue for a long time. We know what's happening in countries like the Netherlands, where there's more and more scrutiny on livestock production. So, with me is the expert panel, and again, talking about specifically subsurface drip irrigation and how it can be utilized to increase your fertility, as well as watering your crops, complying with environmental regulations, and the big one is odor, okay? Livestock stinks. There's a dairy farm right up here a mile up the road. Wind comes out of the wrong way, we smell it. All right, these are the things we're going to be dealing with. My expert panel is Adam Zeltwanger. Mr. Zeltwanger is with Riverview Dairy. They own 17 dairy facilities throughout North America and milk about 150,000 cows. That's more than one day's work. So Adam's going to talk about the subsurface drip irrigations that they have employed and constructed on their facilities to handle this effluent. We got Kurt Grimm. Kurt Grimm is with NutriDrip. NutriDrip is an installer of the Netafim product. So you've been doing that for how long, Kurt?
We're on 10 years now.
Okay, so 10 years. His company goes around several states and installs the subsurface drip irrigation tape. And now more and more with livestock production, doing it as a means of getting rid of the effluent. We got Todd Troyan. Todd Troyan is from South Dakota State University. His role here today is to talk about the research that they have done into these type of operations. He was a little concerned when I asked him a question before, and I said, do what all other professors do. If you don't know the answer, just tell us about your advanced degrees. And then, of course, we got Tim Wolf. Tim Wolf is from Netafim. Tim is the company that's paying for this and is also buying your ice cream. He doesn't really care if you ask him any questions. He knows a lot about subsurface drip irrigation. He just wants you to have fun and learn from the two experts, specifically these two guys right here. Okay, this is something that's not brand new. We've been using manure and we've been using runoff forever, right? Like at my farm growing up, when we got a 3-inch rain, all the stuff from the pad went down into a ravine and went down in the woods and flowed into the Wabash River. That's how you're supposed to manage runoff around a dairy facility. Am I right, Kurt?
That is incorrect.
So tell us specifically what's happening now in the era. We've been doing subsurface drip irrigation. How long, Tim, have we been putting in subsurface drip irrigation?
65 years.
You know, usually you should use a microphone.
65 years.
Okay, when did we start using it to get rid of the runoff around livestock production facilities?
Well, there's been growers that have done it since the 1990s, but a lot more intensively the last 3 to 5 years.
And specifically, we're going to see the intensity of this increase because of the things we mentioned. First off, irrigation, we're understanding the need for it, especially now we got $7 corn or we got $15 beans. We can justify it. There's the environmental thing. Subsurface drip irrigation is more efficient than pivots, yes?
Yes, more efficient, and we will control the runoff and some of the risk for leaching for the environment. It's a better use of the nutrients because we're spoon feeding them during the season.
Thank you.
And no odor.
Yeah, so that's the biggie, is that we've now handled the environmental issue of the amount of water and then what the water does once it's in our fields. But the biggie, when you milk 150,000 cows, some of the neighbors might get testy because of the odor. So tell me about the usage of the stuff through subsurface drip.
Yeah, so 5 years ago we started talking about this, and we had put up pivots to irrigate the runoff water from the feed pad onto the crops, and it just didn't work so well as from an odor standpoint, so we quit doing it, and then we looked into subsurface drip and started doing it with that, and we've got 5 systems we run now, or 7 systems. Kurt's helped us put in, and we got probably 5 more on the books coming up. But the regulations have changed so that the water that rains on the feed pad, we have to capture that in a separate lagoon, and it's that water we're pumping out through the drip tape.
Yeah, so these facilities are obviously massively big. We've got a big dairyman right over here with 4,000 cows. There's a lot of acres of concrete. So we're talking about, you get a rain like we had last night here in South Dakota. It was rain, what, an inch, and it came in about an hour's time. all that water then has to be, by environmental standards on your dairy facilities, it has to be caught in a lagoon. And that's not manure, that is runoff from your facility, right?
Yes, that's correct.
Okay, now what happens after that?
So we pump it out through the growing crop, through the drip tape to the growing crop in the season, right? And so what that does is two big things. It saves us a lot of work in the fall when we don't have 18 to 20 million gallons of water to pump out in the fall, and it's saving us costs, so it's helping us reduce our cost of production, which is why we make decisions the way we do, is to reduce cost of production.
There you go. So instead of pumping water out via a well, we're just using this reservoir, if you will, that is the catch basin around your dairy farm. And we're starting to then look into utilizing the manure lagoons, and you're experimenting in that and across your 5 dairy facilities where you're doing this now. Kurt, tell us what's happening on the development of that.
Yeah, so we're on the dairy side, we're actively working on removing all of the solids from actual manure and injecting that with water into the drip irrigation system. So now we're not only doing the runoff water, we're actually able to purify them, take all the solids out of the manure, so we're just left with the liquid material, blending that with water and injecting that during the growing season as well.
Todd, you're the research guy. When we look at the research that was done on this, obviously now we're putting fertility exactly where it needs to be, down in the root zone and sub-root zone, right? And then the first thing is going to be environmentalists are going to say, oh, well, you're doing something evil, you're injecting this stuff out there. But it's still just fertilizer, and it's still just manure, and it's also completely organic. What could possibly be the problem or the complaint?
We still want to keep that stuff where it's useful, right? And where it's useful is in the root zone. So if we inject the manure, the liquid, directly into the root zone, that gives us advantages in a couple of ways. First, the place there, it's not on the soil surface, and it's not prone to runoff and movement with soil erosion when we get that inch in an hour. Right? So we save that space thing, and also then we can apply when that the nutrients can be used, right, during the growing season.
Yeah, so I mean, one of the things on manure used to be you put too much out there on the surface, you get a big rain event, and all of a sudden it runs down down the
manure needs to be put in the critical root zone. That's where it's best useful, is in that area. That's what we refer to it as Riverview, the critical root zone.
Okay, at Riverview Farms, you've got 5 of your facilities that are employing this sort of practice now. You've got subsurface drip over how many acres per facility on average?
Roughly a quarter section per facility.
Okay, 160 acres is out there with subsurface drip in it, and it's coming off of effluent rain catch water off your facilities. That's about 20 million gallons, you said.
Correct, yes.
And you're utilizing that throughout the growing season.
Yep, right throughout the growing season, so we don't have all the work in the fall to pump that pond out.
Typically at your dairy facility, you pump your manure lagoons come fall, and as you said, that could be 100 million gallons per facility.
That's correct, yes.
All right, so if we can continue to develop the system with Kurt where we're taking that water from those manure lagoons, that could be utilized throughout the year as well.
That's right. We could pump manure throughout the year to the growing crop, which would have a higher nutrient content, obviously, than the runoff water. So it'd be a different management system.
Adam, go ahead.
Well, we're working on developing that right now on a couple different sites.
Okay, now the people in here, because they always like the fact that we're an open book. We're very open about what we're doing here. What is not perfected about it yet? To me, I see a bunch of water. We know that manure lagoons, whether it's hogs or dairy or goat, is there any place that has a goat lagoon, Kurt?
I've not seen one. I have seen a sheep lagoon.
Really? You mean a lagoon that a sheep fell into and was swimming around? Or was it actually sheep manure out there?
It was a confinement sheep. It was a pig barn that had been converted to feeding sheep. It was in Missouri, if that tells you anything.
All right, got it. All right, so while we're on this, when I look at a manure lagoon, it's mostly water. The solids down the bottom. Why not just fling a hose out there and start sucking off the top of that and running it through the SDI system?
Yeah, so that's doable, and we are doing that. So where we have situations where there's a multiple stage lagoon system, and the first stage catches most of the solids, second stage maybe gets a few solids, third stage is water.
Yep.
And so yes, we can just take the water off of that, filter it a little bit, and go through a drip system. The challenge comes in when we get into these situations where we have a deep pit hog barn or we've got dairy manure that's really concentrated, maybe in that 8 to 12% solids, a lot of solids in there. We've got to get that stripped out to where we're down to a 1 or 2% solids, and it just looks like coffee. It's brown water, but there's no true solids in there that would potentially plug up a drip line. So that's the part we're perfecting, is how do we get all of those solids out of that really thick manure.
Tim, I got a question for you. You're the irrigation guy, you're the Netafim guy. Can our system handle 1% solids in there with no problem? I mean, I've seen your pipes, they got little teeny pinholes in them. How much solid can go through there? 1% is going to be all right?
Yes, we can manage the 1%, yes.
2%?
2%, we have to do some additional filtration, so we can manage it. It's manageable.
But it's also a ton of stuff that we're talking about. You handle a lot of gallons of stuff because every day you're washing down the facility, you get rainwater. Your manure pits are mostly water or mostly brown water, right?
Yeah, we just sample the manure and then we sample the fields and we have to balance that agronomic limits. Our goal would be that 100 million gallons that we pump in the fall. Our big goal we have out there, which we're trying to get to it. We don't know if we will or not, but our goal is to do 30% of that 100 million through drip tape.
So you'd like to use 30% of the manure as well as 100% of the rainwater that's caught in what you call it, the feed pad pins.
Feed pad runoff, yes.
Okay,
correct.
now these guys are all wondering and gals are all wondering, what's the nutritive value? You know, if there's not manure and you're just catching stuff from the pins and, I'm sorry, from the facility, there's no nutrients. That's just all rainwater, right?
Well, there is a little nutrients. The nitrogen is the main one, and there's 1 to 2 pounds of nitrogen per 1,000 gallons of water. So if you want to put on an acre inch, that's 27,000 gallons of water, and if you have 1 pound, that's 27 pounds of nitrogen. So again, not a lot, but it's enough to spoon feed a crop.
Got it. Money. You don't get to be the size that Riverview is without making money. You care about money, and obviously when you're a commodity production business, it's about cost savings on things like manure management and water management. You spoke before we went live up here about how much less you're spending to get rid of that effluent versus if you had handled it in a traditional way, putting it on tanker trucks or something like this.
Yeah, so the traditional way we do it is the drag hose system, like all the puck equipment over here. We drag hose it on the field in the fall, which at 1 to 2 pounds of nitrogen per 1,000 gallons, where manure is 33 pounds or 30-some pounds of nitrogen per 1,000 gallons. So it's a vast difference. So you don't have as much value going through that hose. So we end up just pumping it on the fields, and it costs the same as it costs to pump manure. So whatever you're paying for a gallon of manure to be pumped, you're paying that for a gallon of effluent water, runoff water, with way less nutrients. But in the drip system, it shaves off about 75% of what it would cost on the manure side for us.
Is there going to be more of this, Dr. Todd Troyan? Is there going to be more of this? I mean, are we at the beginning of this and we're going to look back 10 years and say, can you believe that they didn't just handle this way all the time because they just were not as efficient as they are now? 10 years from now, we're going to look back and say this was like the dark ages of effluent management?
Well, I totally believe so. As we think more about precision management of all aspects on the farm, that certainly includes water. So this is precision management of water and the nutrients then in the effluent.
Yeah, and then I think, Tim, don't we all agree that everybody that's in this tent right now should probably install more subsurface drip irrigation in the next couple of years?
No question about it.
All right, let's go on to my man, Kurt. You've been doing this for a long time. You're seeing more and more of this. Tell me about some of the problems you've had to address and got through them, because you even will willingly admit this is not a perfect system yet. We're not doing all the manure lagoon. What things have you gotten through to make the system better?
Yeah, so water quality is probably the one that comes to mind first. So understanding what's in the water, whether that's iron, manganese, those are some things that we view as challenges. And obviously solid separation right now is a big one on our radar, and being able to get those solids out of that manure. Those are probably the two big ones. And then just the time windows that we have to work in, getting everything installed, getting it maintained properly.
Hey, wait a minute. We have a microphone for that. I was going to call for questions right now. Go ahead.
Well, I was just curious, like, you know, like on when you maple syrup and you got that filter press, could you like something like that on a bigger scale, you know, to get the solids out of there? It's just kind of a curious.
So in other words, could we filter out the solids? Is it the fact that there are solids that's the problem, and we haven't figured out how to let them settle out or filter out? Is that the limiting factor?
The challenge is the volume. So the volume of material that we have to deal with. Yep. You got the right idea. Yep. It's all about volume and scalability.
You said you're going to take it. You got 5 of the 17 facilities have it now. There'll be another 5. Will it just be for the effluent and the runoff, or are we going to really get there on the lagoons, on the manure?
Yeah, we're going to get there. It's definitely past the point of experiment at this point when we have 5 systems in, and the resources and time we're spending at this, we're definitely going to get there on the manure side.
So if you are not a livestock producer and you're saying, can I benefit from this? Can I get that free nutrient value? Can I do this? What do they do, Tim? They say, I'll put in the subsurface drip irrigation, but I want me some of that free fertilizer coming out of his lagoons. Is that day coming, and how do I do it?
Yeah, there's many examples of people sharing, like a Riverview that has more manure or more feed pad runoff than they can use, and there's partnerships that can happen with other folks, and you know, taking the water and working it through the irrigation system. You also get the benefit of the solids. So if you take the solids away, then you can haul the solids further away from the facility and cover a larger area with the fertility benefits and the soil health benefits of the manure.
I would think that's the big benefit of this system, is that if we get to where we're taking the water part of a manure lagoon and we put it in that quarter section you spoke about, now we get down to where we can get those solids that are now not water, and we can truck it further to the fields that the most needed fertility. Is that what we're doing at the Riverview system?
Yeah, correct. That's one way to manage it, manage the volume that we're dealing with, is to move them solids farther away.
Kurt, give me your thoughts on what he just said and what you're going to be doing to improve the 5 facilities he has. What needs to happen on the 5 facilities he already has and to get them to where they're really more efficient with this?
Yeah, so I think just understanding the management around when to apply and what are the other things that we can, you know, so how do we make the nutrients the most efficient we can make them, right? In the past, manure has been viewed as it's a good fertilizer resource, but we haven't made it as efficient as we could. And so what are the other biologicals and the other things that we need to put in there to make it even better, that we can get more good out of it, get more mileage out of it?
Kurt, you told me that you have an organic farm that you've worked with, and this is great because it fits their entire system. They can't be using chemical fertilizer. They want this. It makes them more efficient. Talked about that.
Yeah, so one of the Riverview sites is on an organic grower, and 100% of his nutrients came through the feed pad runoff. Last year he had organic corn, no commercial fertilizer, just the feed pad runoff, and he had 220 bushel irrigated yields on organic corn. So some real success stories out there on guys that are able to use this system.
Tim, big picture. We're going to be doing more of this. All livestock facilities are going to be doing this in 5 years because of environmental pressure and a means of taking care of this effluent and making it more beneficial.
There's no question, especially in the highly populated areas, there's a lot of pressure for smell and the environment. So there's certainly a need there, but also in the less populated areas, it's a beautiful fertilizer product. It helps soil health. It manages the manure, manages the water, the irrigation in a nice way. The plant appreciates it being spoon-fed onto the plant. It appreciates it, will respond for higher yields because of that. So there's no question. Every, not just dairy, not just swine, there's beef folks talking about it. We're doing some modified versions of this on some beef feedlots in Kansas. We've done swine lagoon with the manure going out into a lagoon. We've been doing that for decades already. That's the easy one. The one that we have the manure under the barn is the one that we're working on right now because of all the facilities that have manure under the barn. I guess one comment to summarize your question is, we have a working system for every one of those. Now it's a matter of scaling it up and making it feasible for each of those operations. In some of the higher solid scenarios, we have a working system for every one of them right now.
Got it.
It's going to grow.
And I'm going to go over here. My man Ben is a dairy operator right here in Sodak, and he's going to have a question for you.
Yeah, thanks, guys. Ben Stout, A1 Development. A couple questions for you. What do you do in the winter with the system? And then also, do you have any systems that are using digestate rather than manure, and how does that change the management?
Yeah.
Enunciate that word again, using digestate. Okay, tell anybody that might not know what digestate is.
Yeah, so digestate meaning that it came out of a methane digester. So the manure's been processed through a digester and methane's been harvested off of it. So one of the test sites with Riverview that we worked with a little bit has digestate on it, and it changed it a slight amount. It actually made it a little bit easier to separate. It wasn't quite as slimy, and so it helped a little bit, but not a significant difference. The question about wintertime, so kind of our rule.
Wait. Riverview is principally in Minnesota and South Dakota, so winter is not really an issue.
Yeah, but what do we? So anywhere north of Interstate 80, we come into the air compressor and blow everything out in the winter. So these systems are off in the wintertime.
You blow 160 acres worth of drip tape out with an air compressor?
We do. Very large one. 500 horsepower, 1,600 CFM.
Got it. And then you want to contribute on that, Tim?
I wanted to comment on the digestate, the methane digester. One of the surprises that I had personally, I'm an agronomist, and I thought when we run it through the digester, we're going to lose a large portion of the nutrient value. That was not true. We would lose very little of the nutrient benefit of the manure. So we're really tickled about that, and I think, in my opinion, a majority of the dairies will have methane digesters, and that will fit right into this system with no problems.
Do you have a methane digester, Ben? Oh. Okay. Did you want to go ahead and put in your purchase order? I think he's getting ready to buy some stuff.
They've been trying to get me to buy one for quite a while, so I know these guys pretty well, and I actually worked with Adam when they were putting this in at Riverview. I think it's a great idea. I really do. Getting rid of manure in the fall is very, very challenging to do, especially if you get a lot of, wet fall. So anytime you can get nutrient out in the growing season is a good thing.
And odorless manure application. You heard it here first.
Okay, by the way, I'm with Extreme Ag, and if you don't keep up with Extreme Ag, that's a collection of forward-thinking, progressive farm operations throughout North America, and two of our operators do have subsurface drip irrigation with Netafim. They don't have lagoons. So Kelly Garrett is over there in Iowa. He's got the tape. He's got it out there, and he says, I'd love to put manure out and get that free nutrient value, and also if it keeps my neighbors happy that there's no manure smell here. He'll promise he doesn't have a dairy, he doesn't have a hog facility. Can we figure out a way to get him manure from a few miles down the road? Can he benefit from this?
We can build him a dairy.
All right, so besides building him a dairy, how can we get him this resource and utilize it to everybody's benefit?
Yeah, so there are some situations where there's one just north of here, about 20 miles, where there's a dairy that has more manure than they have land to apply it to. So there's those areas that are getting over-concentrated, maybe with livestock. They need to move some out of their watershed.
So do we just put it on a drag line and pump it a couple miles? How do we get it from the facility to where there's acres that can handle it?
Yeah, probably within a mile or two it'd be practical to pump it. Otherwise, tank it is probably going to be the...
Got it. Any questions out here? We're getting close to wrapping up and getting close to ice cream time. Yeah, we got one right back here. That's all right. We got a microphone for a reason.
Adam, with the effluent that is left after you take off the water, are you still going to be able to pump it miles in your drag line system?
Yeah, that's correct. So after the manure the 30% of the manure, then we pump the rest of that. The balance of it goes in our drag hose system onto the fields. Gets injected in the fields.
Anybody got anything? Anybody? We want to make this as interactive as possible. Answer your questions. Of course, we'll be here during the ice cream social. Anybody else got anything? All right, let's go ahead and put a wrap on that. And I think we need to go with Todd. You've been researching this for a long time. Are we going to get to where, if you're a livestock producer, you have to do this?
I hope not. I hope it's not a have to, but the benefits that it brings make it a very attractive option for yourself and for your neighbors.
Tim, you've been in this business for a long time, and it was always just about irrigation. Now it's about management of effluent, it's about nutrients, it's about keeping the neighbors happy, et cetera, et cetera. What excites you about this?
Yeah, it gives us another option. You know, we've done a lot of irrigation like you talked about. We've done a lot of fertilizer, commercial fertilizer through our system, so the irrigation fertigation is long-lived. The thing that excites me the most about using the manure is the biological benefits, the soil health benefits. I'm an agronomist, and I see huge opportunities to improve our soils and to improve our yields.
That's the
utilizing
biggie
it.
that I wanted to go to Adam with. Okay, you've got it in operation. You're not necessarily an agronomist. You're a dairy guy. You probably have agronomists on staff. You're putting that water out there, what, 12 to 16 inches is the depth? Have you seen, in the few years you've been doing this, a absolute noticeable difference of agronomic result by putting this effluent out there through drip?
Yes, we've seen good results as far as numbers and data. I don't have that off the top of my head, but that's an ongoing collection thing. Getting nutrients and water into the critical root zone is what that's what a crop farmer needs. That's a good thing. And odorless manure application.
You sound like you've been to a couple of county council meetings where they're just hammering on the stinky dairy down the road, because you brought up the odor thing a lot. All right.
You have no idea.
All right, Kurt, I want to close it out with you, the expert that does this. Subsurface drip irrigation to handle effluent and also eventually manure, water. What do you think? Close me out.
Yeah, so I think as we look at nutrient efficiency and, I mean, $1,000 nitrogen, I mean, it's just how do we get more out of these livestock facilities, be able to take that same product that maybe we were putting on 150 acres, and is it strong enough that we could get it on 300 acres now, because we're putting it out during the growing season instead of in November, and then we lose how much of it through leaching and all of those things. So I think there's just a lot of opportunity as we really look at how to optimize nutrients. We need to get more value out of this manure and be able to apply it during the growing season.
Adam, don't you think that there was a time in dairy where it was just, we've got this product we got to get rid of because it's a problem, and now we're looking at it as we've got this resource to be managed?
Everybody that grew up on a livestock farm knows the story. I'm 48 years old. We just used to, when I was a kid, we just drove out to the field and the closest place to get rid of the manure, right? And now all the regulations have come in, which is a good thing to have some of that. And it's made us be better. It's made us be better farmers. It's made us manage our nutrients better and the value and see the real value of it.
His name is Adam Zeltwanger, Riverview Dairy, is sitting next to Kurt Grimm with Drip, the installer for multiple states. You can talk to him. Todd Troyan, coming over from South Dakota State University. I know in the summer, most of the time, professors don't do anything. We appreciate you showing up. And we, of course, appreciate Tim Wool from Netafim. He's the sponsor. He's the tent renter. But more importantly, he's the guy that's going to be paying for your ice cream. The soft serve machine's about to be open, and I want to just leave this with one thing. His name is Ben Stout. He's a 4,000 cow dairy operation. He's been getting that $24 per hundredweight milk check, and he's got some money to spend. Talk to each other. Thank you for being here on behalf of Netafim, and I hope we can make this all work out for you. Thanks a lot. Have an ice cream.